You also have worked at Deloitte, and wherein you have also had a choice to something called as partner track projects and between your pursuing your passion, right? So what internal decision trees led you to take this leap, and were there any butterflies in your stomach back then?
Definitely butterflies. Yeah, and just to clarify too, so I say I was on partner track because when I decided to leave, there was a partner that was like, you are positioned really, really well. Like you're on the right team, you're doing the right work, you've been delivering good work. So they're like, you're on the track to just continue to churn and get promoted, and like, are you sure you want to give this up? And I'm really glad he said it. It really made me think. And the reality was is I hated what I was doing.
Your new book is coming out now, Bridging Intention to Impact. What is it about? Is it a new take on UX research? Is it a new take on value proposition or finding value in the products you work? And who's it for?
So at its core, it's for anybody building product. And not just digital product. And my newsletter now is called Everything is a Product. It's because I really do live my life philosophy in that way. I think that everything can be made a product.
While we are talking about coaching, there's one important aspect that we see in today's world is the uncertainty around the jobs. There are a lot of people searching for product jobs across industries, given the dynamic shifts that we are observing. And you also coach people to say that treat your job search as a product, which is having a value proposition. So if you have to explain that to our audience about what do you mean that if they are on their job search.
What I would ultimately say is you got to really decide. Do you want to chase the money or do you want to chase the passion? And if you want to chase the money, then you are a product. You are a product in a macro labor economic environment.
Hello, hello, hello. So, welcome to the Priceless Conversation, the podcast where we navigate the art and science of product management, user research, AI, automation, and pricing. We do this with a bit of wit, some wisdom, and a lot of dashboard war related stories. Hi, all, I'm Satya, a life scientist who found her way in the world of AI and product management. And yes, I still use a lot of research, data, and connect a lot of dots across domains to solve problems.
And I'm Amit, your co-host. I'm a CPO, a builder of dashboards, destroyer of unnecessary features, and your guide to this weird, wonderful world of product management. We've got an incredible guest today. We've got Joyce, who's a writer, a lecturer, a researcher, and the person who's at Microsoft. So welcome, Connor, to the Priceless Conversations.
Thank you. I really appreciate you both having me on. I'm excited for a great discussion.
Super. So, Connor, as we were discussing sometime earlier, you have a degree in psychology and also have a double majors in industrial organization, right? Just before you pivoted into behavioral science. Let's go back in time, and if you would have met the college-going Connor, what would he be surprised to learn from your journey of different studies?
What a beautiful question. So I came into college and my first degree is in management. And so I did that because I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. The more that I went through the management classes, I saw that there was a lot of great opportunity to really put to practice the skills that I was learning in business. But I knew I wanted to be different. I didn't know exactly how I wanted to be different, but I knew that there was something there. And so that's why I brought on this psychology. I'd always been fascinated by the human mind. And the more, this was about my sophomore year, so the more I went through school, I began to realize, wow, this is a beautiful combination of business and psychology. The thing I didn't know was that this whole field of behavioral science was going to turn into, really, it's a common topic now across many different disciplines. Back then, it was still a very obscure and new field. And so I think the person back then who was just learning it and then jumping to my master's, the person who decided to leave a great job at Deloitte where I was a consultant and take a risk on going and getting a master's in a field that still most people didn't even know what a behavioral scientist was. I think that past self would be really grateful that it actually all worked out.
Super.
You move, you to Microsoft. You've been touted as the first behavioral researcher at Microsoft.
Hmm.
Do you realize that your work has now powers a bigger shift for you and for the team?
Yeah, it's great. I know Matt Waller, who was Microsoft's first behavioral scientist. I'm so happy he took that title because it allows me to be able to call myself the first behavioral researcher since that was my title. And so I joined Microsoft in 2019, and then I left in 2022. And when I came back a little bit over a year ago, I joined a different team. So just to call out that arc there, and I'm happy to explore more about that. But joining as the first behavioral researcher and joining on a team that was a recent acquisition for Microsoft, it was really this blue ocean for an opportunity to explore how to fit in to the operations of Microsoft. And I think there's two real splits that happened while I was there. And for me professionally, that is. One is the impact that I did make while I was there, and I'll touch on that in a second. The other piece was that the things that I learned is what influenced my writing of Bridging Intentions to Impact. I really saw there the opportunity that comes from a very simple definition of what a feature is intended to do. So the core of my book, Bridging Intention to Impact, is the user outcome connection, which is you define a feature by the outcome it is intended to make, what specific behaviors will need to be changed to create that outcome, and then how does it actually ultimately impact the business. So if your app is intended to help someone lose weight, that's the user outcome, is actual pounds lost or pounds gained if it's intended to help them build muscle. How do you actually get them to do that? Well, you get them to change their workout behaviors. You get them to burn more calories, consume less calories, engage in different types of activities. And if you do that correctly, it's likely that person's going to realize, oh, this thing works. And since it works, they're going to keep buying it. They're going to subscribe. They're going to retain. They're going to upsell. So an ideal feature is going to do those three things. That it's going to change behavior. It's going to lead to that user outcome and then ultimately create a business outcome. So I learned that, and it was a huge opportunity because I had that blue ocean to explore and ultimately create that framework, which is a pretty simple framework, but especially the processes behind it to make it actually real. And that is what the core of the book is. So actually answering your question on that former part is what did I leave and what was it like is I got to see that in between my time from when I first joined and I did that original work that led to those ideas, a lot of that thinking wound up planting while I was there in a bunch of different teams. And when I came back 3 years later, those practices had been built into, or I should say that those ideas were built into some of the practices that those teams actually took. So it's a really beautiful arc. And not always is it directly my work, and I can't take full credit for everything that I've seen at Microsoft. It's a huge company with many great thinkers, and at the end of the day, the core framework isn't that novel. But I do know that me pushing real hard for us to develop new metrics to be able to ultimately measure behaviors and outcomes help plant that seed across lots of teams, because I presented to teams across Microsoft on this. That line of thinking that I now see is just much more common across many teams.
Perfect. So you also have worked at Deloitte, and wherein you have also had a choice to something called as partner track projects and between your pursuing your passion, right? So what internal decision trees led you to take this leap, and were there any butterflies in your stomach back then?
Definitely butterflies. Yeah, and just to clarify too, so I say I was on partner track because when I decided to leave, there was a partner that was like, you are positioned really, really well. Like you're on the right team, you're doing the right work, you've been delivering good work. So they're like, you're on the track to just continue to churn and get promoted. And like, are you sure you want to give this up? And I'm really glad he said it because it really made me think. And the reality is I hated what I was doing. And so it was easy because I told myself I could do this for the next 10 years and there's no amount of money that I could be paid that it would be worth it because I really, really don't like this. And I was suffering so much while I was in that role. And so was I scared? yes. And at the same token, I saw how taxing it was for the people who did stick it through. There was a few who loved it. You could tell they loved it, and that was their job. And I was so happy that they stuck it through because they were happy being the person who was the partner. There was other people who did it because I think at some point there was so much sunk cost. And they're like, I guess I'll just ride it out at this point. And then they hit there and they're like, it's really not that much different. It's still a lot of work. And I lost a family, or I lost an opportunity to enjoy myself along the way. And I just couldn't buy into that. And again, it's for some people, but it wasn't for me. And so it was really hard. And I mean, I was giving up from my graduating class of my undergrad. I made the most money that when I told my professors, they were like, you were probably making the most money that we've ever heard of somebody graduating from this business school. And it only got better. And so it felt like, am I really sure this is what I want to do? But again, it also was relatively easy because I knew I wasn't going to survive if I stayed. And so I just left.
So, have you had any mentors who would guide you through it?
I did, yeah. I've had many great mentors. There's in the acknowledgments of my book, I call out a few of them. At that time, his name was Jason Marshall. He was my manager at the time, and I had some really good conversations with him. He was a great mentor, and I mean, he showed up for me. There were sessions where, I mean, I was crying. I was emotional. I'm an emotional guy. I know I was really, really torn and scared to realize how unhappy I was and how much that I was not going to be able to make it there. And even though on the surface it looked like everything was all fine, so he definitely played a big role. Yeah. And then I think there was actually this partner, I wish I could remember his name, but an IBM partner who initially was trying to get me to come over to his team. And then when we had more conversations, he was like, actually, it sounds like you just really don't want to do any of this work. And I was like, I don't. And I need to figure out how to get out. And he was very supportive of me leaving once he realized, like, I'm not going to take you because you probably are going to just leave me. So let me actually help you figure out what you're doing with your life. So the through line of my life is I've been surrounded by many great people. I'm extraordinarily grateful for that.
You've you've done a lot of work, and your new book is coming out now. Bridging intention to impact. What is it about? Is it a new take on UX research? Is it a new take on value proposition, or finding value in the products you work? And who's it for?
So at its core, it's for anybody building product, and not just digital product. And my newsletter now is called Everything is a Product. It's because I really do live my life philosophy in that way. I think that everything can be made a product. The book's main focus is for those building digital product, but the philosophy really behind it is transferable. I've at least found it useful and transferable in pretty much anything that I do. I already alluded to core framework of the book is business as behavioral outcomes lead to user outcomes, which ultimately lead to business outcomes. The bulk of the book is for how to actually do that. Because again, it sounds simple. I say, how do you measure your product? And very new teams, or ones that are really just the surface level of getting by, are going to say usage. Usage is a good metric. I'm never going to say that you shouldn't use usage. But if that's the only thing that you're using, that's going to not lead you very far. Because usage is an important thing. If you build the best solution in the world and no one uses it, well, then it's not the best solution.
Yeah.
And at the same token, it is just a one variable. Did somebody engage with something? And as we all know from any product that we use, we don't use something purely just to use it. You don't ask somebody, why are you on Instagram? They're like, just to click buttons on my screen. Or why are you playing with that video game? Purely to just press buttons on a controller. No, it's entertainment.
Yeah.
Or with a weight loss app, it's to lose weight. It's not just to log calories. It's to log calories for a reason. And so every application has this purpose behind it. And that's what that user outcome is. Again, that's not now.
Or
Go
an
ahead.
intent. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's that intent that somebody is choosing to do it. And so the book is intended to help people be able to understand how to not just look at their product that way, but actually build metrics so that they can go out and determine how to create the right solution to change behaviors, to change user outcomes, and ultimately build a successful product.
So this is for product managers, UX researchers, and anyone who's interested in understanding usage. That's such a nice thing. And does it give us some? Is it more of a prescriptive or academic, or how would you call it? The book to be, for our audience.
Yeah, it's 3 sections, and I intentionally wrote it that way. The first section's theoretical, and it lays the foundation for everything. It explains really just my mental process while I was at Microsoft, going through these same things. Like, why are we launching these features and then they're not fully catching? How are we measuring success? Who actually is trying to, why did we design it that way? And the more that I asked those questions, the more that I realized that there was an opportunity if we were to pivot towards building with that intention in mind. And so that's what the first section is it's again the theoretical underpinning of the concepts. The second one and the bulk of the book is very prescriptive. I don't want to say very prescriptive, but it is prescriptive. It's a 5-step process for how to actually fill out the user outcome connection. And it's about building those metrics, it's about experimenting, and it's about utilizing those results. And then the third section is about how to take that and actually enact change. And what's actually beautiful is, to my surprise, that's been the most successful part of the book when I do consulting. And I have had more intimate conversations with people, is the third section talk about how to start a grassroots movement within a product company. I built on some of the thinking from Lean Startup and from there's one other book in there that I think the UX Playbook. And it's really about how you as an individual can actually really create a philosophy change. And that's what the third section's about. Really puts it to practice, we'll say. So it's theory, then it's prescription or procedure, and then it's how to actually really make it happen.
I think that's been core to what a lot of product people need, and we definitely we've got a lot of academic books on UX, which probably help you do either a major or we've kind of borrowed books from the courses. So it's so nice to have a book that's not only theoretical but prescriptive, and folks who, like me, who are not from the UX background, we can still understand about analytics. We can still understand about what is the theory behind it. So I look forward to that.
I appreciate it. Yeah. It's I tried to make it a fun read while also still being educational.
I hope we have not asked you enough of the magic which is in the book, but yeah, it's great to. So, just one. So moving to a little bit about your coaching and consulting, and just to lean onto that aspect, when you consult people and when they are talking about value propositions, when you're talking to organizations and PMs or making these mistakes and who are zeroing in on their own value proposition, how do you bring about that change in them to talk more about usage rather than features?
It's actually, for the people that I work with, it's because they've passed a certain threshold of they have to want to think differently. So just to be clear, like I did not find some silver bullet where every person just instantly changes their mind. I think I've had even more successful career. So
None of us have.
I have found something that when somebody really asks, how can we do better? When I find people that are asking that question, that's when I can provide a lot of value. And it's because really I just come in and I ask the same question that I do in the work that I do at Microsoft and that I've done at other startups, and really I've been doing since I started these concepts. I ask them, why'd you build that feature? And I generally get an answer, well, the data says this, or a couple customers said this. And I go, okay, well, why'd you listen to those people? And why'd you build the feature that way? And the more you ask that question, it generally comes down to one of two things. One or two customers were very loud, and it spooked people, and then they went and found evidence that confirms that it's a bigger problem, confirmation bias, and then they go and build it. The other one, which is even more unsettling, is there's one or two people that are like, that's the way we need to build that product because I understand our customer. How do you understand our customer? I understand our customer. That's not a good way to build product. Unless that person somehow has a very, very deep understanding of the customer because they themselves lived that entire life of whatever they're building for some years, it's very unlikely they're going to have the product intuition to actually just go out and build something that is going to be highly useful. It falls into a lot of confirmation bias and it falls into a lot of overconfidence. And once you've been able to expose that in one way or another, the conversation becomes a little bit easier because then you go, well, wait, because someone who wants to change is going to realize with a little bit of a little bit of conversation, a little bit of really just poking around and asking, but really, why did you design it that way? Okay, maybe you really understand the user need. Maybe they do. But why did you choose to build it in that light? And with a little bit of probing, a little bit of coaxing, most of the time I'm able to have them get to a point where they're thinking, okay, we probably could use some more data. Once you hit that piece of data, then you're golden. Then it's just a conversation of, well, how are you going to go and collect that? And it comes back to, well, we're going to look at our usage, we're going to look at our retention, we're going to look at basic usability, like our SaaS score, or I should say our NPS score, or our usability score, our, I was thinking single usability survey score.
Okay.
Good metrics. Again, what is it actually doing for your customer? What is it actually doing? What behaviors are they changing? I ask those questions 9 out of 10 times, they have no answer. And then I say, well, just so happens I have a worksheet we can go through.
Yes.
And Connor, so while we are talking about coaching, there's one important aspect that we see in today's world is the uncertainty around the jobs. There are a lot of people searching for product jobs across industries, given the dynamic shifts that we are observing. And you also coach people to say that treat your job search as a product, which is having a value proposition. So if you have to explain that to our audience about what do you mean that if they are on their job search, what is it that they should treat like and how is it relevant to be like a product value proposition?
I've been having some really good conversations about this recently, and I think they're really important conversations to have right now with AI automating as much as it has and is going to continue to. I think there's really going to be a big question that most people, especially people that are like entry level right now, I really do feel extraordinarily, like, I don't want to say feel bad, but boy, they have it real tough. And it's real. And
Yeah.
even mid-level and senior people, I mean, it is everybody. It is a tougher field, and there's a lot of change that's coming. But I think especially for early career people, you really got to ask yourself, why are you doing this? There's a great framework that I love. David Brooks revived it. It goes all the way back to the ancient Greeks, but it's the four idols framework. What are you trying to get out of life ultimately? Is it money, power, pleasure, or fame? I think it's super important to know which of those four you're chasing after. I'll even distill it into two things. Is it money or is it fame? I should say, is it money or is it pleasure? Excuse me. And I think that those two different, like when I left Deloitte to go and pursue the master's, I did that for pleasure. I did that because I hated what I was doing. I wound up having a much more successful career than I would have had I stayed. That's luck. I worked hard, but I'm lucky. I happened to be that I got this job at Microsoft coming out of my master's because it just so happened Microsoft decided to acquire a company that when they got acquired had asked for the headcount for a behavioral scientist, and it just all corresponded. Now, I also heard that happened, reached out and told them that there was no way they were going to be able to find a PhD with 5 years of consulting experience because I knew most of the people in the behavioral science field. I knew that person didn't exist. And after pushing them a little while, they finally capitulated and were like, you're right, we'll interview you for it. So I didn't make it happen, but it also was just luck that it even existed in the first place. And so I say that to say, I took the risk, and I don't want a story like mine to be a reason why somebody says, I'm going to go and choose my passion project and I will likely make more money, because those two very rarely actually color. I am an exception. Extraordinarily grateful to be that exception. And so I tell people this now is, if you're going to leave your job, if you have a solid job right now to pursue something, recognize you're saying that sitting at the top of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You're out here chasing self-actualization. That's what, for people that don't know Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there's many infographics that'll do a much better job, but think basic needs at the bottom. Once you get those, you get social and community needs, and then at the top, you get self-actualization, trying to find your purpose. And if you leave and you try to pursue that purpose, you got to recognize you might wind up back at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy, chasing after your basic needs again, just trying to get paychecks. And that's really scary. And then all of a sudden, your purpose doesn't matter as much because you're just truly going back for whatever is possible within, you're living paycheck to paycheck is another way to put it. So what I would ultimately say is you got to really decide, do you want to chase the money or do you want to chase the passion? And if you want to chase the money, then you are a product. You are a product in a macro labor economic environment. And so you need to figure out what you're good at, and you need to figure out what makes you unique. And if you find that hybrid, you can potentially make a very strong place for you in the market. But you have to be good at it. You have to figure out, and everybody's good at something. Everybody has some skill set. As long as they've gone to school and they've listened enough, they're going to be good at a couple of different things that the market still needs. And then they're going to have some sort of history. They worked that odd job in their high school. They happen to have a parent that works in the chemistry industry. They have to, whatever it might be. But you got to find that intersection, and you got to dig into that intersection. And you might wind up not really liking what you do, and that is unfortunate. But if you want the money, that's the reality of what it is. On the flip side, if you find something like me wanting behavioral science, I have conversations with behavioral science, people interested in behavioral science all the time. Yeah, I share the same thing. You got to recognize you might be making a 5-10 year bet that I'm going to go and do this master's, and I'm not going to pay it off for 10 years because the first 3 years out of my school, I'm going to work as a postdoc, or I'm going to not even work anything behavioral science wise. I'm just going to be working, happen to be in the field sort of thing, or happen to have this skill set. So that is what I would really push for, to think about how are you going to actually turn yourself into a product that fits into the market that you are trying to find a place within.
Super. And you touched upon Gen AI and AI, which is everywhere. I think we open LinkedIn, we open news channels, we can't escape. And as someone who have worked in AI since the time we called it machine learning or NLP, so I think of myself as a little older. And so you have led generative AI research at BetterUp. And if I understand that right, you're also an advisor at ChatGems. So in today's world, we see the Gen AI behaviors most often as a conversational with the bots, with different machines or with different apps. What is it that you see is a different behavior that wasn't expected when certain applications were rolled out or when you worked on this Gen AI research?
Could you ask the last part of the question again?
So, if I have to reframe it properly, then what's the most counterintuitive behavioral shift that you saw when you were leading the Gen AI research?
That is a great question. I think that the biggest, I wanted to say that it's that people don't like chat as much as I thought they would.
Mhm.
I think chat is still actually intermediate, and I don't think we're going to go full chat. But that one's somewhat predictable. I think what is the next step to that, which I think is even more surprising for me, is that people still love graphical interfaces. And like, I don't, even in a world where there is Her, like that movie Her is possible, I think people are going to still want a phone. I think even if it's just a screen that you look at and it does visuals or something, like it's just like I was talking to you all before we recorded this. I have a dog, and I love watching her sometimes because sometimes we'll be out in the woods and I will be looking at something beautiful, and I'll look down at her and she will be sniffing something beautiful because I use my sight because I'm a human. She uses her nose because she's a dog and she can barely see. Yeah, that's so far in front of her. And so we are visual creatures, and as such, we're going to want to have some sort of visual aid. And so it's not counterintuitive to a degree, but it is kind of counterintuitive when you see all these concept videos of, oh, I'm going to talk to my AI, or everybody's referencing Her these days, or it does seem like we're going so far conversational. I do think it's going to be much more conversational, but whenever I really get into an argument with somebody about this, I'll say, like, how many times have you been on a subway and you've heard somebody just straight up having a conversation with themselves because they're talking to an AI system? You probably haven't. because it's still really odd to do that. And I try to do it a
Yes.
decent amount. And I look weird when I do it. And I recognize I look weird when I do it. So it's going to take years of social norm changes for the chat component to really change and people to feel comfortable. And we're going to need GUIs in the interim.
Yeah. So, Connor, putting you on the spot for this one, and probably this is what I feel, if there would have been an app you've built, there is this engineering team that prioritizes different incentives like cost to build versus cost to buy. And then there is, let's say, a product team that prioritizes usage. Why not if there is an app that gamifies this decision alignment? How would that app look like?
That's interesting. So you're saying, what would an app look like that would help teams kind of like triage what to build ultimately?
True. How do we triage it? Let's say there's one feature that helps usage. There's one feature that helps bring down our AWS costs or Azure costs, which is what we build first.
I think it's a tough question. And it's one that's, I live this because I'm in a lot of these calls, especially I'm working on a new product that Microsoft is about to launch. Yeah. So fortunately I can't say much more than that, but we're having a lot of these I think that it really that's a tough question. I go ahead.
Maybe it has just a triaging feature. You probably choose which feature to do most, and then the ones wins. Or maybe we use that whole agile system of let's rate it from the complexity perspective, and then 13 is the one that loses.
That was where my mind went, was you could get these complexity like impact matrices. And so that was where I was going. But I like the concept of the question. So that's why I wanted to try to riff and see if there was something in there that like there was some sort of behavioral concept at play. So I guess I would say that, the addition that I would just add, and I don't know how you'd productize this exactly, but at least like by productize, put it into a digital product. But there is there's complexity of technical, there's value that will come from developing it from a user perspective. And then there's this behavioral change component, which again circles back to the book. It circles back to a lot of what I talk about, because I think sometimes we lose the forest for the trees in that you want to actually make people change their behavior. You're not trying to have them change their outcome. That's what you want to happen, but their outcome will only change once their behavior does. There is no outcome that occurs within a human's behavior that is not impacted by their behavior, by principle, or by the behavior of others around them, or the environments that they put themselves in, etc. So that would be just the additional piece that I would be really interested to see how that could be factored in, is like not just the value that it will create, but how much is that behavior going to change? And so changing some tech debt, like an AWS server or lowering that cost, isn't going to change the behavior directly, but it might make it so that this thing runs a little bit faster, or it does something like that, or it runs slower now, and it might actually lead to the inverse. Behavior doesn't change as much because now I'm waiting for this workout to load, so instead I switch over to Instagram or something like that. So yeah, that would be my best attempt at riffing on the question.
Yeah, well, I think you're the best judge of user researcher, and I love the approach you take. It's what I think. These are the kind of gems we want on these priceless conversations, where we get to know how the brightest minds in the field think. Some of that maybe could be imbibed by people like us.
Appreciate it, Amit.
So, Connor, thank you so much for really deep diving into so many topics. And if our audience would like to reach out to you, which platforms can they use to connect with you?
Yeah, so LinkedIn's the home. That's where you're going to catch the latest. Connect Connor is my handle. Connor Joyce is my full name. So LinkedIn's going to be the place where you're going to catch all the promotion of the different conferences I'm speaking at. I'll be promoting this conversation there. Everything as a Product is my Substack. That's my new passion project that I'm investing in this year. It comes back to this philosophy that I do think everything is a product. And so it's a newsletter. And I still haven't figured out exactly what I'm going to do with the brand, but I want to build it more. That's all I know. And beyond that, lots of more good things to come.
Super.
Thank you so much, Connor, for joining us today. we are so glad that we are able to have a brand come to our show. And we are going to see you a lot more in the coming days. We are going to read a lot of your books. And yes, we'll definitely sign up to the newsletter. We are hoping that you are one of those folks who can help us usher in the new era of user research in this AI first world.
Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you, Amit. Thank you, Satya. It's a pleasure.
And for our listeners, thank you for tuning in. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please do leave us a small feedback on the comment section or reach out to us on LinkedIn. Till then, stay curious, stay connected, and yes, keep building what matters.
Bye-bye.